Yeah. Hey, hi everyone, and welcome to another session of our great 5G series with Karim Rabie. Today, actually, we are beginning the session number 6. It's a great achievement for me because over this difficult time and this busy year, we were able to have 5 sessions, and this is session number 6. Will be the last session in 2020, but starting next year, we will preparing a lot of interesting session with you. I'm glad to have Karim Rabie, our co-host, guest speaker, the main brain behind all this informative session. I'm glad to have you, Karim. And how was your day?
Hey, thank you, Radwan. It's a sunny day. I hope you can see it already.
Yeah, that's
It's
good. So
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 it's a warm winter here in Cairo, in
yeah,
Egypt.
even it's winter, so that's great. A sunny day in winter, that's something good. Yeah, yeah,
Yes, yes.
yeah.
And the topic for today, it's very interesting, and I don't think there are a lot of updates or content available online to describe the relation between the hyperscalers and the telecom domain in general and the 5G specifically. So yeah, I really expect a very interesting session,
I
inshallah.
agree. Yeah, I agree. And because it's something new and there's not a lot of solid or standards, I believe the discussion will be great. We have a great minds, people with a lot of experience in Europe, Middle East, and Asia Pac, working with big vendors and CSP. So I'm sure they will enrich the session. So maybe let's kick in and start directly. So yeah, as you can see today, this is session number 6, as I highlighted, and mainly we are talking about the hyperscaler in telecom map. So what do we mean by that? We are trying to explore and discuss with you first what do we mean when we say hyperscalers? What is the first thing came to your mind? And we're trying to set the scene for understanding what is hyperscaler and how they can integrate and cooperate with CSP for many opportunities, especially in the 5G era. After that, we'll talk about the product lines in hyperscaler and CSP, how يعني, what are the area of integration between them and how they differentiate between each other. We'll spend quite some time discussing what hyperscaler can do and CSP apparently cannot do that to up to that level. And for sure, we'll discuss some challenges and potential obstacle in the relations between the two. And finally, we'll finalize with areas of cooperations and couple of use cases and announcements recently announced in the market. So, as usual, please feel free. As I mentioned, it's a very interactive session. Please feel free to ask your question in the first 50 minutes on the chat, and Karim and myself will tackle these questions. And at the end of the session, we'll open the floor for you to raise your question, unmute yourself, and ask your question directly to us. So, Karim, what do we mean by hyperscaler?
Yeah, yeah. This is a very I would say trending question, and that's why as part of the preparation for this session, I posted one survey on a LinkedIn, and most of my community or circle is people coming from telecom domain, like myself, and also profiles coming from the IT and from public cloud. So I just put that question: what jumps to your mind whenever you hear the term hyperscalers? So let me just review the poll answers and my impressions and even your impression as well. So it seems that the majority is almost like 70x%. Whenever they hear about the term hyperscaler, they think about public cloud service. And if you analyze that kind of response, maybe it makes sense, yes, because this kind of hyper like give the impression that it's a hyper deployment scalers, like it's like are scaling to the demand, so it fits to the public cloud service, and that actually also proved that most of the telecom community see the hyperscaler, and we will define that later, as public cloud service. So these are like the main I would say picture in mind, that hyperscalers are doing public cloud service. But on the other hand, like good ratio, and actually most of them are coming from hyperscalers themselves. They think about the wide ecosystem, and I think that's how the hyperscalers want to represent themselves. And me personally, I also see that hyperscale means that you are having a partner that having a wide ecosystem, like a wide ecosystem of partners, wide ecosystem of infrastructure partner, application partners. So when you get a service from a hyperscaler, you get the full ecosystem. It's one of the strengths of the hyperscale. The not really big results chose the global wide community, but again, that's a very main aspect of the hyperscale. We are on the LinkedIn, right? We see daily tens or hundreds of posts that celebrating certificates from Amazon development, being Amazon developer, AWS, Google developer, Azure developer. So there are a lot of community around these hyperscalers doing development, doing administration, doing applications. So that's also one important aspect of the hyperscaler. Global footprint that these services or these hyperscalers
Sorry,
are
there is a lot
actually.
of echo. Sorry.
Yeah, Radwan, if you can mute everyone, please.
Yeah, I will do. Yeah, I was actually going to say the same.
Okay, but you can hear me, right? Okay, good. And the global footprint, this gives the impression that these hyperscalers can provide service anywhere. So the service not localized to an operator, to a certain community, to a certain country, but actually their services or portfolio are global by nature. So again, the main finding here that most of the telecom community or tribe or profiles or people, whenever they hear hyperscalers, they position that into public cloud service. But as a definition, and I tried to find some logical definition, not a definition maybe from Wikipedia, that, okay, hyperscaler, they have two parts, right? The hyper and the scalers. So scaling, we all know scaling, right? People working in the cloud. We know that scaling is how you can have the resources on demand or resource elasticity to cater the increase of demand of resource or the decrease of demand of resource. So that's the scaling. While hyper, as I said, it gives the impression of hyper deployment, like huge distributed cloud systems. That's why it makes a lot of sense, as I'm writing here, that when you have a hyperscaler, that you position that for companies like Google and Facebook, Amazon. Those are actually, the mapping of hyperscaler to companies, because those people are dominant in public cloud services, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, X as a service. Those are dominating the market. And at the same time, they have a full cloud portfolio, end-to-end from infrastructure to applications, and globally footprinted everywhere. So we are going to focus somehow, and we will always, through this presentation, we will give examples on Azure, AWS, and Google. We are not comparing them. We are assessing their positioning in the telecom map.
100% agree with you, Karim. I believe maybe the definition include other players, include other vertical, other industrial. But for me, as you mentioned, the perfect match for this world currently are these big names like Google, AWS, and Azure. Even I was discussing with you before the session that maybe for me, if we combine the three other options, if you have a company with wide ecosystem and global footprint and a lot of developers which actually help in this CI/CD or DevOps mentality, like a lot of development per day, maybe then we'll start having many more hyperscaler and qualify for this thing. So if we go next, for the next question. So how this hyperscaler, how can they help in the 5G era, and what are the priorities when it comes to the CSP using this hyperscaler?
And this is the confusion, and that's a trending question, because if you position these hyperscaler as only public cloud providers, and then you are now entering the 5G era, so the link is missing somehow, right, in the community. So this is something that I'm trying to answer it in the next slide. So how do they fit? How can they help? We have first to understand the current focus of the operators and the CSPs in general. So as usual, I try to bring some latest like surveys from the market and use that as an indication to assert a conclusion. So I got this one from Mobile World Life. It's part of GSMA. It was a survey report. It was almost like 345 profiles coming from service providers and coming from enterprises as well. And the question was actually, what are the most important radio technologies in the next 5 years for industry applications? And why that's important? Because we believe that the majority or the focus or the main focus of the operators to monetize 5G will be all about industry application and enterprises, not just the B2C and having nice data packages and more consumption, but no, there's a lot of focus technically and from business perspective on the industry application and on the enterprises. So the survey was targeting this segment, the enterprises and the CSPs. And as you see that the majority, 59% of the survey respondent, they said, okay, that our first choice, 59%, is 5G. If you take the same survey 2 years back, you will find that technologies like LoRa and Wi-Fi were dominant. But now the focus is on 5G. So that's the technology anticipated by the enterprises. Another survey, and I focus here on the Chinese market because it's a huge market, and we all know how the innovation is there in China. So again, from GSMA, the focus on 5G on the edge are expressed on these three, I would say, three segments. So the investment in China is like for the Chinese operators to bring 5G is $180 billion from 2018 to 2025. And for enterprises, they believe that the 50% of them find that the edge capabilities will help them to bring new monetization for the IT deployments. And actually 90%, I would say like mostly all of them, see that that's the right focus, the edge is the right way to bring revenues in the 5G era. So it looks like the focus from all CSPs, from all enterprises, are on the 5G and specifically on the edge. And that's actually the sweet spot for the entrance for the hyperscalers. That's why you will always find the announcements, if you are following the news, all the announcements are referring to joint partnership with CSPs in the 5G and particularly in the edge. I'm just bringing here some news and then we can open some quick discussion. For example, it is happening currently, this kind of cooperation, that's Verizon and AWS. And as you see, deliver mobile edge computing. Right? So that's the edge, that's the 5G edge. Orange and Google Cloud, strategic partnership in AI and edge computing services. AT&T integrating with 5G with Microsoft to enable next generation solutions on the edge. So that's the focus, and that's the entry point for hyperscalers. And in the next slides, I'll try to, in a way or another, assess this part. Why the entry point is the edge.
Yeah, 100% agree, Karim. If we get back to the survey, so maybe if you start thinking, some people here maybe will say, if you are talking about industrial, I have two questions. Maybe if you're talking about industrial application, maybe we would say, maybe as you mentioned, IoT and maybe Wi-Fi will make more sense because these are enterprises and actually they have maybe like a mining or we call it industry factor version 4.0. So this make more sense. So this is what I want to achieve, that how 5G, if you compare 5G to 4G, what are the differentiation in 5G which actually will help all this industrial? And I would say something like the network slicing, as you mentioned, the edge, bringing the cloud core, the 5G core very close to them, allowing all these different applications like virtual reality, like ultra reliable, low latency control, and so on, very close to the edge. That's why you start seeing 5G is even more appealing than maybe the main technology there, maybe like IoT, like robots, like sensors. Do you agree with me, or there's another attractive feature in 5G, which make all this vertical industry believe there will be their savior. There will be like the technology for the future.
Well, yeah, we all know that 5G with the 5G characteristics is entertaining like a lot of verticals. Okay, the most significant thing about 5G that it is very business oriented, unlike the former technologies, right? It's not just about boosting the throughput, downlink and uplink, which are there for sure in the 5G. But if you see the 5G from different angles, the 5G is giving the ultra latency, the ultra low latency reliable connectivity. So like the one microsecond and 1 millisecond, whatever ultra latency. So we are now focusing on the critical services. We are focusing on like the V2X segments and the corresponding companies. And also at the same time, there is one phase from the 5G focusing on the M2M and IoT terminals, which we call the MTC and the 3GPP terminology, giving a boost for the battery life, giving more coverage for IoT. So if you compare that to the formal ages or the formal years, the technologies like LoRa and Wi-Fi were giving more reliable connectivity for such use cases. But now with the 5G, while you are covering all these verticals like the mission critical and the IoT and the consumer segment, so you are covering a lot of use cases. So now it's a time to position the 5G to serve the use case that we were never, that we never saw that the mobile sector would cover. Okay.
100%. Yeah. So let's get back to your next step. How the 5G, how the hyperscaler will help to complete the picture on the edge. Yeah, and then we can start by just trying to, as you can see here in the slide, what are the products which usually the CSP actually have in his service offering, and compare it with the hyperscaler product line.
Okay, so shall we take a look on the chat first, maybe if there are questions before we go to this one? What do you think?
Maybe let's take a quick look.
Yes. Okay.
The echo issue has been solved. The second question: can we use hyperscaler or web scaler?
No, they are not the same. So we are focusing here on the hyperscalers. But I personally don't use the web scaler term in the telecom framework. Maybe in other technologies, we're focusing here on hyperscalers.
Second question.
Yeah, please, the other one.
Yeah, have we seen any implementation of ultra latency, ultra low latency control?
There are many pilots, and whenever you see a partnership between, for example, a certain vertical, like, for example, Renault and Google, they are cooperating. So these kind of use cases rely on ultra latency. So it's being achieved, but in pilot stages, and that's very aligned with the 3GPP evolution. So and very aligned with the 5G standalone deployments. So as you know, in the whole world, there are few 5G standalone deployments. Most of the majority are NSA, non-standalone. So these use cases are there aligned with the SA deployments.
Yeah, the last two questions I prefer to visit them after we discuss these two, the next couple of slides, because I believe we'll answer them. If not, we'll get back to them.
Exactly. Okay, so here we are assessing the bricks, okay, or the steps or the domains that CSPs must take care of to launch a certain product. And that product can be anything, right? Can be like triple play, can be a certain voice over Wi-Fi, any commercial product. Maybe an SD-WAN connection with some security VAS. So any product the CSP is used to do. So in the CSP logic or hierarchy, from marketing perspective, you have to write the right product or the right market bundles, and this require. Let me just minimize the video because it's taking my screen here. Okay, so for this one, there are a lot of efforts being done on digital channels. So each operator has its own digital channel, either application, marketplace. There are a lot of processes and a lot of systems doing the product lifecycle management, like introducing a product, aging a product, doing upgrade. There are huge bulky systems doing billing and revenue management. And we all know people working on the telecom domain. Whenever you introduce a certain product to the market, to engage that or to integrate that to the current billing system, that's a very complicated process and require a lot of services from the vendors. That you define the new tariff and then you do the right billing and revenue management, and also from the BSS layer, there's a lot of customer care and CSR like call center desks and this kind of things. There are a lot of things to be made on this layer just to introduce a certain market product. On the underlying, these products maps in the network to services, to certain network functions and applications. And when you talk about this layer, you find a lot of systems doing legacy OSS stuff like provisioning, assurance, a lot of like service catalogs, and lately orchestration solution, automation solutions. And in big operators, there are a lot of systems from multiple vendors. So this layer is really complicated. And if you think about, for example, 5G core or 4G core, if you have a multi-vendor stuff, think that you can have, for example, UPF from vendor X, MF for vendor Y, and then UDR or whatever, NRF, NAF from other vendors. And then each system has its own provisioning system. And around these, there are some sort of umbrella for fault management and performance management. So it's really a complicated process. And to realize that, there should be some sort of physical or virtual infrastructure. Currently, most of the infrastructure are virtual on cloud-based. So telco providers are investing a lot on on-premise clouds, which sometimes refer to telco clouds or IT clouds. There are a lot of efforts to do a DNF or CNF onboarding, and we all know people working on that it has been always a painful milestone to do an onboarding of a DNF from vendor X on infrastructure from vendor Y. You know, there are a lot of videos online that most of the CSPs are complaining that takes months to onboard a certain VNF. The procurement cycle are very fixed in the operators. So, for example, you can only expand one per year, mapped to a certain budget cycle. So it's very rigid. The expansions and the upgrades, even it is a cloud, it's still a rigid process following the procurement process and following some rigid operational process inside the operator. There are a lot of flavors for the clouds. Either you can get multiple silos from multiple vendors like Ericsson, Huawei, Nokia, Cisco, whatever, or you can have like a generic cloud that can cater multi-vendor, and both require some sort of complicated governance model. And on top of that, you need to run some sort of certification and testing program to make sure that whenever you onboard, will do nearly the same performance that it used to do in the legacy world. And the technical or the telecom bread and butter of the full CSPs is actually the connectivity. So whatever you do on top is realized based on the connectivity that you are offering to your customers. Either it is a 3GPP like 2G, 3G, 4G, or a non-3GPP like Wi-Fi, like DSL, or any fixed connectivity. So connectivity is the main thing that the CSPs have been always providing. And on top of this underlay services, they start to provide some overlay connectivity like SD-WAN, like enterprise CPEs, like secured access. Okay, and currently they are all focusing on the connectivity of the 5G, like fixed wireless access, FWA, and other techniques. So you see that to introduce a product, there are a lot of work to be done at each layer, and normally the time to market is really significant, and that's really one of the pain points that the CSPs have. I'm not criticizing anything, but I'm just assessing the current stack, the current setup, because at the end I'm one of this community working on the telecom domain.
Yeah, I agree. Many of us, I believe, we are coming from this CSP, and we understand that it's like a big dinosaurs. Even some of these big CSP, they have around 100,000 of employees, lengthy process, as you mentioned, time to market is maybe a few months and years. So maybe the culture and maybe the adopting like the new mentality, that like the DevOps and the changes to be quick. This is, I believe it will not be happening very soon. There are some telco trying, like Rakuten is maybe an example, but in the norm is, as you mentioned, Karim, is very lengthy process, engaged a lot of teams. So how this differentiate from the hyperscaler? And I believe this will be one of the advantages when it's come to hyperscaler, and that's why they are hyper and scaler.
Yeah, exactly. On setting the other side, Radwan, okay, how would an hyperscaler launch a product? For example, let's say Amazon or AWS wants to have like a new offering in the market. So what are the bricks or the domains supporting that? So similarly to CSP, they have products, they have bundles, but from their side, they have the public cloud digital channels. So we as a users, we are very familiar with the digital experience that we get from AWS, from Azure, from Google. So they have this public cloud digital channels. They don't have to reinvent the wheel every time and doing like application or marketplace. Although I acknowledge that currently with telco providers or CSPs, they have nice marketplaces, but for sure not compared to the public cloud digital channels that they're in hyperscale. They have very reputable enterprise SaaS offering. You are 100% confident that you can get software as a service or anything as a service from AWS, from Azure. So they have very well-known enterprise offering, and enterprise are already used to it. They have very modern billing plans. So you can pay per use, pay per usage. And, you know, there are a lot of modern billing plans that actually currently the mechanisms are not there in the CSPs. The CSPs, to change the billing plan, that's a very lengthy and complicated process. The product that they offer to the market, it's global by nature. So the CSP normally offer a product for the customers in the operator premises, right? But hyperscaler can offer a product, enterprise product, anything as a service to anyone in the world, as long as he has the connectivity. The second significant thing, and that's also a change in the mindset, that these hyperscalers are now positioning solutions for verticals. So you see a direct link between the hyperscaler and a certain segment. You find that a solution from Azure for IoT, a solution from AWS for vehicles, V2X, a solution for Google for X. So it's very easy for them to go and talk directly to the vertical because they have a full stack well positioned to the vertical. This is something that the CSPs were a little bit late. They didn't see the opportunity from the verticals except maybe 1 or 2 years back. But now the hyperscalers have ready-made solutions for verticals, and that's something that encouraged the CSPs to cooperate with hyperscaler, and we will show that. From service, from network function, or from application perspective, you cannot compete as a CSP because you may have one vendor, 2 vendors, 3 vendors. You can push on them to give you their latest portfolio. You can push on them to follow the latest release. You can push on them to do certain development by change request. But those guys, hyperscalers, they have a large ecosystem of partners. So, for example, let's take Microsoft, Azure. You get Azure. Now they have Affirmed. They have Mavenir. They have a lot of edge application partners. So they have a lot of partners that can serve any use case. On top of that, they have a great global community of developers. So that at any time, if you are bringing hyperscaler and offering a platform as a service, you are 100% sure that the skill set are there in the market, and you can go and do innovative stuff, do innovative applications that can serve any kind of segment. They have end-to-end full stack in the sense that they have the infrastructure, the software, the middleware, platform as a service, and the applications. So they have a full staged stack that can be provided to enterprises. Again, they have a very nice agile automation orchestration solutions. We know those guys. They are really great in the automation. They are really great in the cloud native deployments. So these are really the aspects on the service layer for the hyperscalers. From the virtual and physical infrastructure, and that was one of the questions, you cannot compete with them, right? They have hyperscale public cloud deployments. This means that they have huge data centers. huge ability to scale. Whenever you try to as a CSP to make your own DC, you do a lot of investments, but you will never be able to scale as those guys do. Okay, so they have a hyperscale public cloud deployments, a great elastic scalability. You when you get infrastructure as a service from AWS, you never care about the environment. You only care about the application because you are 100% sure that whenever the application grows or service grows, the elasticity will be there. Huge cloud native deployments. Most of the contribution on the community on the cloud native projects and theories are coming initially from Google. Google are the main, for example, contributor or the main founder for the Kubernetes stuff. Global presence, that if you as a CSP, you want to provide a service and link customer offices, for example, in multiple countries, or provide service in Brazil and service in Turkey and service in China, they have the global presence. So they can provide this service. You can rely on them. And finally, they have the all cloud delivery models. So if the telco cloud or the IT cloud on-prem is providing infrastructure as a service and maybe platform as a service, those guys provide everything, all cloud delivery model, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, function as a service, software as a service, X as a service. So they are really good at that. That's their technical bread and butter. But here I bring the brick that's not yet under the governance and the control of the hyperscalers, which is the connectivity. And that's still now, it's dependent on the CSPs. Let's call it the underlay connection. So me as an AWS, if I'm delivering services, for example, in Egypt, while Egypt doesn't have the right connectivity like 4G coverage or fixed connectivity covering the nation, then most probably the enterprises in Egypt will not enjoy my services. That's why I'm still, as a hyperscaler, dependent on the CSP to guarantee the connectivity. However, and that's why I have it in another color, there are some serious attempts from few hyperscalers, to remove this dependency. So when you follow the news and see the updates about the projects for Facebook, for internet.org, the attempts from Amazon to bring internet connectivity via balloons, via satellites. So these kinds of things shows that hyperscalers, there are some trials to decouple the dependency from CSPs. And that's a very, very, I would say, critical stage. If hyperscalers have the connectivity directly to their enterprise customers, at that point, really the CSPs will be in a great danger, because currently they are in danger because they're only offering connectivity, and whatever comes from hyperscaler is just an overlay services. But if the connectivity as well is taken from CSPs, that will be really a critical milestone in the telecom industry as a whole. I think we can stop here, Radwan, and we can get some comments.
Yeah. I believe we have a very interesting discussion on the chat. And actually, as I mentioned, it's still nobody can guarantee what will happen, because the main question here we're trying to answer. We have, as example, we have CSP with the normal strengths, with the normal products, they are very strong in connectivity. They understand the connectivity inside out. So this is the area. And hyperscaler coming from the other side. So they are understanding the industry, understanding the application, understanding the businesses and different verticals, and they've been dealing with them for decades now. And Microsoft, as examples, they're dealing with different customer for decades. So, I mean, the question will be, will these two giants find it's better to cooperate like they are doing now, like they don't want to go head to head? As example, most of the CSP, they have telco cloud, they start migrating some of their internal resources to public clouds a bit differently. I mean, it's different from CSP to another. So will they cooperate, or will the CSP try to be aggressive and take the initiative and maybe start deploying telco edge cloud by themselves? I mean, start like maybe Rakuten, building their somehow public cloud, or become like a hyperscaler. Or the third option is opposite. Do you think that hyperscaler, as you finish your speech now, Karim, will hyperscaler try very hard and go directly into the connectivity and provide the full solution for the end customer? Like our friend Amr mentioned, maybe these guys can do like a virtual MVNO and start selling directly to the end customer, and maybe then upset one of their biggest customers, as example, like the CSP, if they are going to compete in US, and then they start competing directly with some of their big customers. So there is a lot of aspect here to this one, including technicality, including how mature they are, including some political aspects. So we can tackle it together. So Karim, what do you think?
Okay, many points to discuss here. Okay, first of all, they are already cooperating. Okay, so the question is, will they cooperate? They are already cooperating, but will it be a long-term partnership?
Yeah, that's what I meant. Will they continue that? Yeah.
That's the question. I cannot give any declaration here, but we'll have to wait and see, because I see that eventually there will be some conflict at the end. Why? And by the way, this is already happening now. Imagine the case, for example, there are some SD-WAN vendors, providers, they talk directly with the enterprises, right?
Agree.
And there are some SD-WAN vendors who can actually communicate with CSPs and sell through CSPs.
Yes.
Normally, the CSPs are very reluctant to work with the vendors who work directly with the enterprises, because there are some sort of uncertainty and issues of trust. Okay, because if you can sell to my customers, then why I would partner with you? Maybe I have to compete, because I have to take you out to the market. But there are some movements in the market that cause some unrest at the operator side, telecom side. For example, when you see that Facebook is now having a huge, great department of connectivity, it's called connectivity, then you get some, you start to be uncertain about what is the exact direction. When you see open source core Magma project from Facebook, this means that maybe now you, as an operator, you don't want my core, right? And when you see those guys working on the Open RAN field, then you start to get more suspicious, right? Because if those guys will be able to do a full network, then what is left? What is left actually is just the spectrum, right? And the coverage. And with the private 5G, in some countries, regulations accept that enterprises can get their own spectrum. And if this happens, then 100% CSPs are not on the table. Okay? So there are two approaches. Either you cooperate and guys, let's win together, or like you mentioned, Rakuten. No, Rakuten, I will be like Amazon. I will be like AWS. I will provide everything. So you see, it's very, very tricky. There are many scenarios, and we have to wait and see. And I see some very, very, very good questions. Really, very, very good questions on the chat. I will try to answer because it's coming. And for example, there is one question about multi-cloud and hybrid environment, and I'm listing that as a challenge in the coming slide because it is a challenge. There one comment about like MVNO will rely on hyperscalers, and yes, like what I said, eventually MVNO can go to hyperscaler and get the full thing. Okay.
Yeah. So maybe one of the questions which repeated a lot, Karim, and I believe it's, as you mentioned, it's obvious. One of the areas of cooperation between hyper cloud and CSP is maybe like in the edge. If I believe, as you mentioned, as you highlighted on the ads and publicly, that many of them start using this hyperscaler for their edge computing. As example, they can use something like AWS wavelengths or maybe Azure edge zones, so they can start deploying these servers, which completely orchestrated and managed by this hyperscaler very close to the customer, and start giving them the use cases like gaming, virtual reality, and so on. If you can just in 1 minute give your comments about this point, and if you see other examples, and then we can go directly to back to the slides.
Okay, Yani, I was going to answer that implicitly so that we all reach the conclusion as the last slide, but I can just shed some light quickly. Okay, so you as a CSP, you want to invest on the edge. Investment on the edge from infrastructure perspective is huge. If you want to cover the nation from edge perspective, then you will have to have allocation or POPs all over the nation, like the states, for example, USA. So it makes no sense to do that. While, for example, AWS have already POPs everywhere in a certain country or a certain nation, and that's, for example, the case with Verizon and AWS. So they choose a certain region, and Verizon said, okay, AWS, let's have a wavelength, that's solution, POPs at these areas. And then Verizon will cooperate with AWS to deliver edge services at this part. So point number one, from cloud infrastructure perspective, the investment is huge for CSP and the risk is huge to take because you will have to have thousands of POPs. So why you do that while actually those guys, the hyperscaler, they have the presence. That's number one. Number two, most probably you will have enterprise vertical solution at the edge. So the enterprise or the vertical cannot wait you to do the onboarding in months, in weeks, and do the billing and do whatever. You need a ready-made stack that can be delivered in a box to the enterprise. And those guys, the hyperscalers, are very good at that because they have an end-to-end offerings for verticals. So you can rely on them. Third thing, you need to have some sort of platform as a service capability at the edge. What's a platform as a service? That you can allow the innovation of developers at the edge to provide edge applications. If you provide a private 5G, for example, for a certain vertical, so it's a private 5G to a certain factory, okay? And then you are relying, as an example, on AWS. So if you are providing platform as a service AWS for this factory, this means that this factory, if he has the right skills of AWS developers, then he can actually develop its own applications, edge applications. So that's something that cannot be provided by any, I would say, teleco stack ingredient, because teleco stack by nature is closed, right? When vendor X gives you an edge solution, then that's an edge solution. It's not a platform as a service. So all these points, Radwan, and more other points I will explain, make us feel that, yes, it makes sense that for edge in particular, that hyperscaler get in, because there's a real value on hyperscaler on the edge. But if you ask me, for example, if I am running a virtual, let's say, media gateway or a virtual MME on your core regional data centers, if you ask me, does it make sense to make it Amazon or AWS or Azure? I would say no, because it's a very stable deployment, maybe running on VMware, running on OpenStack. No need to disturb such static deployments. But when you go to enterprises on the edge, yes, it makes sense. I hope that was clear.
Yeah, perfectly, Karim. So yeah, we can carry on as you suggested that we have a couple of slides about what are the advantages or what is the additional which hyperscaler can do apparently better than the normal CSP.
Okay. And guys, any questions not answered in the session, I will answer it offline. Radwan, we have to do that, inshallah.
No, don't worry. I'm saving all this question and we will blog.
Okay, so what hyperscaler can do, and apparently CSPs can't, and apparently is a very important term because there is nothing that CSPs cannot do, right? So if X is doing that, then Y can do that, right? So everyone can do anything, but what hyperscalers can do? First thing, the end-to-end portfolio. Let me just minimize this chat box. Okay. The huge partner ecosystem cannot be hyperscaler cannot be compared to the one on the CSP. And I'm giving some screenshots from the community. So Microsoft purchased Metaswitch, right? Purchased Affirmed. And there are some talks on other telecom companies. So it seems that Microsoft is continuing the telecom mile, is building the telecom mile. So it's not just applications, IT, but it's an end-to-end solution. When you get Azure, then you get the full stack. AT&T and Google, they are partnering for 5G computing service for enterprises. So imagine, and that's just an example. if the Android developers are now having access to develop applications for the edge, what will be the height and the volume of application that will be delivered to the market? Huge. So that thing that Google can bring, for example, to telecom. Facebook now is actually having their own Magma core. It's live in I know personally one of the operators using Magma, and now there are some startups giving like network in a box, core in a box, radio in a box, relying on open source from Magma from Facebook. So that's something CSPs cannot do, because to CSP to build that, it issue RFPs, it push on vendors, telco vendors, and it gets like 1 year cycle to have a stack at the end. The second thing that hyperscalers actually are perfect in that they have the global outreach and they have dominance in the hyperscale public cloud infrastructure. And as I said, that's one of the reasons that it makes sense to rely on them on the edge, for example. You see that how AWS, Microsoft, and Google are leaders in that. So when you rely on them, when you partner with them, then you engage, or you get the public cloud experience to your offerings. For sure, there are very nice and standard aligned and open source clouds there in the telecom operators. I cannot deny that, and again, I'm one from this community, but that cannot be compared for sure to the experience and the dominance of those players. The large community of developers, it's really, for me personally, I feel that that's one of the main strengths of the hyperscalers, that if you bring AWS, if you bring Azure, Google, and then you provide a platform as a service for your customers or even for your teams, then you will make use of the huge community of developers and skill set there in the market. And that's just a screenshot of the development certificates in Azure, but it just give an indication. And we all see the LinkedIn daily announcements of people gaining this knowledge and getting the skills. One nice thing that once you go to the edge and you talk to the enterprises, you have to have some sort of solution in a box. You don't have to take years to provide a product to enterprise customer, right? It cannot wait. So I'm just bringing some indications from the market. So Renault and Google are partnering, right? So that most probably will be a solution for verticals. AWS, they have focus on the vehicle solution. So you may expect that if you get AWS, then you are close to have a consolidated solution for vehicle solution. And for sure, AT&T and Microsoft, this announcement is famous, is actually the edge and IoT. So Microsoft is also having, Microsoft Azure have like a good platform and device even for IoT. So when you partner with them as a CSP, you get ready to deploy solutions for verticals. Those are just the things that actually that are significant for hyperscalers, and they are good at it. So it's a question to the operator. Do you want to compete and build these capabilities at your side? And Rakuten is doing that. Okay, and some operators, they have global services outreach like Verizon. Also, they have some of that. Or you can cooperate, or you can have the hybrid model. You can still cooperate, and you can have your own offerings. We have 10 minutes, so I just have two more slides. The challenges, okay, because everything is not streamlined, and life is not that easy. So what are the challenges and the potential obstacles in this cooperation or potential cooperation? And I think the colleagues here will agree with me. The organization itself of the CSPs and the operators, we all know that it's bulky by nature. Like there are operations, design, planning, radio, transmission, transport. So that kind of organization, it's not easy for them to deal with the hyperscaler, because hyperscaler actually is a solution that can communicate to many domains. Like you can get marketplaces, like so I talk to BSS. You can get automation orchestration solution or artificial intelligence, so that's the OSS. You can get applications, so that's the service team, and you can get infrastructure, this is the cloud team. So there are a lot of teams, a lot of departments, a lot of bulky, hierarchical levels on the operators that actually makes the kind of handling of these opportunities are really high. So you need to have really an executive stakeholder or sponsor in the CSP to drive such partnership. The regulatories, and that's something that we know in our region, especially in the Middle East and in the EMEA in general, that you have to deal with public cloud with some regulations. For example, some information or some nodes cannot be onboarded on hyperscalers. Some enterprise information cannot be there. Some data must reside in the country itself, cannot go to a server outside the country. Some regulators prevent having a private 5G with dedicated spectrum for the enterprise. So all these kind of regulations somehow limits the framework of cooperation between CSPs and hyperscalers. The culture, the cultures are different really, and I will link that with the operation mindset. People who have worked on the operation on a telecom provider, we all tend not to change stuff. We all tend to make things stable, and that's actually the opposite on the hyperscaler stuff. Because in the hyperscaler, they always tend to do continuous change, continuous improvement, and those different mindsets they always collide because to bring a solution and then to deliver solution to operation, there is a bulky processes, but in hyperscalers it's very smooth CI/CD pipeline. So those two different mindsets always collide. There was one question about the cloud governance on the hybrid cloud governance, and yes, I agree that's one of the biggest challenges because most of the CSPs now, they have some on-prem clouds. It can be VMware, it can be OpenStack with some services running on that. So if you bring the hyperscaler and you start to running service on the hyperscaler, you need to define a multi-cloud governance model, technically and or even from process perspective. So technically, you need to have some sort of orchestration stack that can orchestrate services across multiple clouds, and this is not easy. This is really not easy. And the last thing that I will finish with is the uncertainty and doubts, because I explained to you the CSPs and the telecom community. When you watch the movements and the directions of the hyperscalers, you start to get a little bit, you think it's a little bit, I wouldn't say fishy, but I'm not able to find the right term. But when you see that, okay, they are trying to have open source core, they are working on the radio, they are targeting the enterprises, and maybe MVNOs will go direct to the CSP with hyperscalers. This kind of movements in the market makes the CSP a little bit suspicious and a little bit conservative, okay, and reluctant to cooperate. But it is going already. But I would say I've tried to group the main challenges that face this kind of cooperation. I have my last slide. It's just giving you an example, okay, on a certain product that is there now from the hyperscaler. I chose the AWS wavelets. I made some statements here in bold. I hope you can see on the screen. So AWS wavelets, it's an AWS infrastructure. So it's like an infrastructure by AWS, like this infrastructure as a service, commonly provided by AWS, compute and storage. But we have to treat that together. That this infrastructure deployment, let me use the marker. It embeds AWS compute and storage within the CSP data center. So AWS is going to put their infrastructure as a service capabilities and their cloud capabilities within the CSP data center at the edge of the 5G. So in that case, it's a partnership between the CSP and AWS. AWS will going to embed the cloud capabilities and cloud data center within the CSP's data center to provide use cases, whatever, in the 5G. And here, I just give you an example, okay? So you see here in the locations, if you go to AWS marketplace, and we are all used to do that, and you go to the wavelengths AWS, you find that, okay, they are telling you, we are here located in these locations, in Boston, in San Francisco, in Atlanta, and we are partnering with Verizon. So we have an edge pop with Verizon, okay? And if you get our service, you can get the following. You see here in the right. So you see the infrastructure is one brick. So it's not just an infrastructure. Okay, you get a AWS infrastructure, but on top of that, and that's the strength of the hyperscaler, you get capabilities for robotics, you get capabilities for IoT, you get capabilities for machine learning, for analytics. So that shows, how the hyperscaler are thinking. We are not just here to give you infrastructure as a service and you put your containers or your VMs. No, we are giving you a full solution, and that's something that the CSP capitalize on by getting this offering and provide it to their customers. So I hope I was able to show you the way of thinking, the mentality, how the hyperscalers are thinking to enter this market, and what is the value proposition for the CSP and for the end user at the end.
Thank you very much, Karim. Yeah, I couldn't participate more because I believe the echo coming from my side. So I prefer to keep you going and for the benefit for everyone. But it's a great session. I agree with all that what you said. So I just captured a couple of questions which I believe they're very important to answer. Let's go through the question and then you can above our schedule. Is it okay for you, Karim?
Yeah. For a few minutes for sure. Yeah, I can do that. Can we pick the question, please?
Yeah, I'll start now. Amr was asking about that the added value for hyperscaler beyond edge will be like affirmed and as example the deployment in INA and OpenWave. Then there's another question. If we're going to use a hyperscaler, Anand mentioned like AWS, how to avoid the vendor lock-in?
Okay, so how to avoid the vendor lock-in with the hyperscalers? Okay, so the hyperscaler is giving you capabilities. Okay, so when you onboard or when you have AWS infrastructure and you're having AWS platform as a service, so you start to enjoy the full ecosystem of partners, the full community of developers. So this is not a vendor lock-in. The vendor lock-in, in my opinion, is actually when you get a full stack that is fully locked into like application from vendor X, infrastructure from vendor X, software from vendor X. But for AWS, it's not like that, or Azure, it's not like that. It's just a platform, and whatever on top can be anything. Okay, so there is no real vendor lock-in. The vendor lock-in comes from mainly, and I have to admit, comes from telco vendors normally. That when you get a full silo, like you get a P gateway from on hypervisor from same telco vendor from same servers, and then you are not able to add new functions from other vendors because it's very locked in. So that's the vendor lock-in, in my opinion. But with AWS, with all these people, with this global partners and community, I don't think it's a real vendor lock-in.
Another question from he's talking about the hybrid and multi-cloud, where CSP have multiple, like on-prem cloud, and he has maybe a couple of public cloud. How to assure the orchestration between all these workload and different tenants? And he's asking about as Ansos is one of the options, or maybe as we mentioned, like I would just add, if we are going for AWS wavelengths, the beauty about that with a solution like wavelengths and Outpost, you can have the same orchestration for your on-prem data center or the private cloud plus your public cloud as well. So what do you think, Karim?
Yeah, as I said in slides, the multi-cloud or the hybrid cloud orchestration or governance, that's one of the challenges. Okay, let's talk about the technical part. It's one of the technical challenges. However, if you see the market trends and the modernization of the orchestration solutions, they all refer to public and private cloud orchestration. So most of the orchestration solutions in the market and the initiatives like ONAP and other solutions, they all talk about governing or orchestrating services across multiple cloud. One of them is public cloud, and you will see a lot the AWS, the Azure, the Google Cloud is part of this initiative. So yeah, it is there. It is a challenge, but there are a lot of momentum in the community to do that.
Yeah. Another question, maybe this is the last one. What choice is left for the legacy NEP, the vendor like Ericsson, Huawei, Nokia, if the hyperscalers start building their own cloud virtually? Because these vendors, the CSP was their normal customer. So how they will get affected? How the vendor will get affected if the hyperscalers start playing in this area?
Well, يعني again, I'm one of them, right? I'm ex Huawei, ex Nokia, and I'm working in a lot of CSPs. So I see that there is an impact, and you see a lot of startups currently providing private 5G stuff, relying on open source codes, open source 5G core and open source 4G core, and even the RAN itself became open with the Open RAN. So they have to deal with it in a way that they have to participate. And we saw that lately, right? Because we saw the movements from Ericsson and Nokia to joining the Open RAN. So they became part of it. I expect that there will be some partnership from these players and hyperscalers. As an example, you can get an end-to-end stack for 5G based on Ericsson Cloud Native on Amazon. You can do that. It might be an option. So they will have to cooperate. But if they stand still and insist to work on the old way, I think they will only work with tier 2 and tier 3 operators, but I don't think they will have a chance in tier 1.
Point, Karim. Maybe let me open the floor for our colleagues here. If for 5 more minutes, maybe we can take 2 or maximum 3 questions. If somebody want to have a direct question, please feel free. Either you can put it on the chat or unmute yourself and tell us your question or your comment.
Hi, Karim, Nitesh this side. So
Hi.
just this question, I mean, I just used this question and you answered in the last. I mean, when vendors, they try to do this open run and, participate in initiatives and all that, that is true. But I mean, when these hyperscalers try to, they like, they have acquired Affirmed and, Metaswitch and all that. So they are already, deploying in that way everything from their own end. So how do you see? I mean, they're already eating those pies, even if I guess RAN is the most essential component today, which is, or let's say left out component, which this hyperscaler are not that really, let's say efficient enough to pick it up that way. So I guess the core is anyways going away from the market pie as such. So do you think, these RAN is what choice left with vendors as such?
Okay, so thanks, Tish. It's a very, very, very good question indeed. But if you see the directions or the hyperscalers movements in the market, so Microsoft chose this way. So Microsoft chose to consolidate a full offering or a full stack, mimicking the mobile network, like having Metaswitch, having Affirmed. So they have now a full stack in addition to the applications. Okay, but AWS, for example, is not doing that. Okay, and that's why if you search, for example, in Google between like Ericsson and AWS, you'll find a lot of coupling, like Ericsson onboarded on AWS. So there are still some ways of cooperation between these hyperscalers and the telco vendors. But eventually, and I'm originally coming from core background, I would say that the consumer market will still be served by the giants, the telco giants, because that's where you need the stability and the scalability and this kind of thing. So they will be there. But enterprise offerings, like network slices, enterprise offering, where you want to lower the TCO as much as possible and get the highest revenue, I think that's the sweet spot for the hyperscalers, and that sweet spot for Microsoft. But still, in the core, in the consumer, I think you will still keep the telco stacks and telco giants.
Yeah, thank you, Karim.
Thank you.
And so we still have some time for another question. Okay, that's good. Thank you again, Karim. It was an informative session, lots of fun, and lots of new information. And I believe we can have another maybe session talking more about this topic, hyperscaler and CSP and 5G era. I believe there is a lot of aspects we can discuss in the next session. Thank you again. And if you want to have like close this session with final thoughts, your final thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Radwan, and thanks for all the colleagues. It's a very interesting topic, and the discussion will never end. Every month, every week, we find new announcements and new updates and new shifts in the technologies. I will just end my session with a comment about the skill set, that we have to have some sort of agile and flexible profile, so that I'm focused on the core network, 5G core network. Yeah, but in the same time, I have to see the technologies around me, right? I have to see what Amazon is doing, what Azure is doing, what So we have to have this kind of flexibility in our competences, right? We shouldn't only limit ourselves in a certain technology, because technologies are changing a lot, and you know that, and we all know that. Okay, so let's keep this kind of flexibility. Okay, read about artificial intelligence, about 5G, about edge, about core, about everything, right? And that's it. Yeah.
Thank you again, guys. And as I mentioned, we have to make it easy for you, we have a playlist for all the session we have so far with Karim. And as Karim mentioned, to keep you up to date, I have also other series for automation, another series of talking about design mentality. I'm trying to widen your knowledge and keep touching this interesting area. Thank you all again for being part of it, and thank you for your question and comments, which really enriched the session. And talk to you soon in the new year. And for all of you, have a great year, 2021, and hopefully you have achieved all your dreams. Take care and talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.